Now we have built our application. The next thing is AWS Code Deploy, how you will deploy your application. So generally for deployment, what you need some servers where you are deploying your application. It could be anything, like it could be your EC2 instance, on-premise servers, or Elastic Beanstalk, and nowadays serverless Docker. Anything it could be there, right? So that is one thing, that you need the servers. And if you have lot of servers, like 10 servers, then you need to identify, like how to identify all those 10 servers. So you need to create something that will define, okay, this deployment I need to deploy it on that server. So for that, we use AWS Code Deploy. So here you can see automate code deployments to maintain application uptime. So first thing, we need to create an application. So you can create an application like this. So let me just create this demo hyphen deploy, and you can do this compute platform. So it provides you these three options. So I'm choosing this EC2. So this is my application and this is my compute platform. And you can create an application. So you can see that your application is created like this. Now here you are seeing these two options, deployment groups and deployment. And this is what I was talking about. So first thing, deployment group. So you need to define a deployment group. That is what, where you want to deploy your application. So you can just put any name here. So let me just put like this. And you need to define a service role with code deploy permissions that allow that AWS code deploy access to your target instances. So it automatically has created it, and I'm doing it next time, so I can select it. And now the deployment type, it provides you how you want to deploy your application, in place or blue green deployment. So in place, it just update your existing instance with the latest version. Okay, so during that process, there would be a downtime, because there would be a time when your application is stopped. So that is we called as in place deployment. And the next option we have is the blue green deployment. In blue green, it will just replace the instances with new instance. It will create, if you have 5 instance, it will create more 5 instance and deploy your application there. And once it is healthy, it just replace it. So it's a load balancer settings, it just replace that. So that is what it's called, blue green deployment. So here you don't see the downtime. So in this video, I'll just choose this in place and the environment configurations. Now where I want to deploy it. So you have an options of selecting auto scaling groups also, EC2 instance and on-premise also. So I am selecting the Amazon EC2 instance. And here it works with the tag. So you need to add a tag, and based on tag, it will find out all the EC2 instances. So just an example, I have created one, and this is one instance that I have created, and I can select it in this way. So this is what its deployment group is. Other than that, I'm just going with the default configuration. And there is one more thing that I want to highlight, deployment settings. How do you want to do the deployment? So here it's a all at once, one at a time, half at a time. So I mean, all at once, everything will go in one time. I mean, there is no half, or there is nothing like a deployment configurations. It's just everything will go one at a time, where you are just deploying on one server, then on second, like that. And you can enable the load balancing also like this if you want to, or you can choose accordingly. So this is how you basically create a deployment group, which actually define where you want to install your application. And the next tab is deployment. So it is not necessary that you need to create a deployment for each of your application. It depends if it needed or not. So, but we can see in the create deployment option, you can select your deployment group. So for this applications, I have not created any deployment group. So that's why I am not able to see it. And from where you want to. deploy. So if your application is stored here or here, so you can do it. Here you are providing your S3 bucket details wherever your revision is stored. And note here that it just provide these formats. So like in case of my war file, right? In Java, generally it comes with the war or jar. So either you zip it or either you find a different methods to deploy your war file. This will not work. Deployment descriptions, and here it's a deployment behavior settings. How do you want to do that? It provides you deployment group overrides also, and rollback configuration. So this is how you can create a deployment also. So let me just show you what I have already created. So if I go to my application, so here you can see that I have created this deployment group, and it will provide you all the details. And here you can see that this is how it works. And I don't have any deployment as such created. This is just a deployment logs that you can see that how it is working. And these are the revisions that it creates. And what is revision? That is the best, I mean, most important question, how it works. So revision, it is an artifact that contains both your application files to deploy and your AppSec configuration file. And what is AppSec configuration file? So let me show you this also. So like AWS code build uses this buildspec.yaml file. AWS code deploy uses the appsec.yaml file, where you can define what needs to be done as part of the deployment. So here there is an options like you can provide you before install, there is an after install. All these options are there, and accordingly you can provide what needs to be executed. Like in just this example, I am just doing this. So here I just take the code from S3 bucket, and I'm just moving that file and just restarting the service. So basically, whatever your deployment configuration, I mean, what needs to be done, you can configure in this appsec.yaml file. Okay, and so that revision, so application files, what all can be your revisions, right? Your compiled libraries, whatever its installation packages, everything. And your AppSec file specify what AWS code deploy will follow when it performs your deployment of an individual revision. Okay. And as I mentioned, a revision must contain any source files and scripts to execute on your target instance inside a root directory. And in the root directory, the appsec YAML file must exist at the topmost level and not in any subfolders. Okay, so I already explained you about this a deployment process in place and all those stuff. Okay, so in the deployment also, what it needs, how it works on the AWS EC2 instance. So each EC2 instance, you need to install the code deploy agent. So wherever you are deploying your application, your EC2 instance has a code deploy agent on that server. So that's why you are seeing here that when I am launching an EC2 instance, I have provided this is SN user data. So this is for the Tomcat applications I have provided, but for the code deploy agent also, you need to provide the instructions of how to install a code deploy agent. If you don't do that, then it will not work. So this is how AWS code deploy works.